Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We are so glad, Rachel and I both are so glad you could join us. Rachel, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing well. Pop quiz. What is the most popular social platform for consumer discovery, store visits, and sales?
I'm going to take a wild guess here and say Instagram.
You nailed it. Man, you are good. Well, it's a good thing you're on today's webinar because you clearly know all the answers. We are going to cover a lot of territory today, folks. If you are advertising on Instagram today for brick and mortar stores, this is the right place. You are going to cover today, or I should say learn today, all about just a couple fundamentals around Instagram, just to reset on where the platform resides today relative to all the others. And Rachel's going to talk through that. And then we're going to roll into a couple of consumer perceptions and consumer behaviors around Instagram and talk about how your audience expects to interact with the platform, interacts with the platform, and then responds to the platform, obviously. And then we're going to get to really the meat of the matter, which is a couple campaign examples using various metrics. And then we're going to talk about performance and measurement as a practice and how to think about Instagram relative to it being a walled garden, first of all, but also a platform that is truly geared towards driving consumers to your physical locations. And then, of course, we want to make sure we answer any questions at any point along the way. If you have questions for Rachel or me, or for anyone that could answer them on today's webinar, we will get back to you if we don't have the answer. Pop them into the questions box on the webinar console, and we'll answer those here at the end of the webinar. Rachel, we didn't even properly introduce ourselves, but it's a good thing we have pictures of each other up on this slide so people know who's Dan and who's Rachel.
It gets confusing sometimes.
It's definitely a mind bender. Not as easy to answer as the previous question about the most popular platform, for sure.
For sure.
So I look after, just by way of introduction, folks, I look after marketing here at Reveal Mobile. And what is Reveal Mobile? If we are nothing if not a location intelligence and geofencing marketing expert, we make all that available to you in a platform that gives you really unique insight into campaigns, campaign planning, and most importantly, campaign measurement. And I work alongside Rachel every day. Rachel, what do you do for a living?
I am also on marketing here with Dan. What a lucky gal I am to get to work with him every day. I also run our social accounts here at Reveal. So Instagram, TikTok, I can personally tell you, what it's like to use those and run ads on them.
Awesome, I love it. Perfect way to plug TikTok, by the way. This is your moment, folks, during this boring slide to go over to TikTok and follow Reveal Mobile right now, and then we'll wait for you. All right, we're done waiting. So just as a reminder, all of your questions will be answered on today's webinar or as a direct follow-up to today's content. So don't be shy, ask away, and Rachel and I will get to those here in the next 30 minutes or so. So with that, I'm going to be quiet and let Rachel talk through some fundamentals around the platform. Let's see what that's about, Rachel.
All right, thanks, Dan. So first thing to cover here is just, age-wise, who uses Instagram? And looking here, you can see it is a little bit of everybody, but the majority, almost 90% of people are going to be in that prime spending age. So, millennials, you got your Gen Xers, everyone is on there. And I know from personal experience, I'm 28, so I'm right in that millennial range. My friends and I are obsessed with Instagram. We have every friend group has a group chat and it's constantly sending, memes or whatever, but it's also sending, hey, I saw this cool shirt from this brand I thought you might like, or hey, I thought this house decor looked like something you'd like. So there's a huge part of Instagram that is a shopping experience. There's a whole tab for it on the app now.
Wait, I didn't realize that we had to reveal our age on this webinar. Now I'm all nervous. Do I have to tell people that I'm not 28?
No, you're 28 too, Dan. We graduated high school together, remember?
That's right. That was a good time. You're right.
And who uses Instagram in terms of gender? You see here, it's a pretty even split. So no matter what kind of thing that you're going to be advertising on Instagram, you're going to reach everyone because male and female, it's pretty much almost down the middle. It's actually really impressive to me how even this is. And then in terms of location, who's using Instagram, Once again, everyone does, but the majority of the people, 76% of users, live in high density retail areas. So they're going to be near those stores that are advertising on Instagram, and they're going to be ready, to go in and shop once they see an ad.
Awesome. That's a really good just reset on where the platform fits into the context of all the others. And there is a huge range of user, obviously, in terms of age and location and gender, or a great representation equally of gender. And all of this resonates with retailers and advertisers really well, to the tune of $30 billion, actually. Last year in the US, we, as a collection of marketers, spent $29.79 billion on ads on Instagram, just without even trying, right? It's as easy as it can be to spend money on these platforms. And what's interesting, really, above all, is that it's top of the list. So you think about TikTok and its ascendancy, and you think about Facebook and its legacy, and YouTube, of course, being a Google property, and you would think, well, those are probably, close seconds, if not even first. Well, fact is, Facebook is a relative distant second by about 20%. And even more impressive, Instagram's ad revenues are expected to grow by 33% this year. And they're going to get really close to $40 billion just in the US alone. So all of these metrics around where's my audience and how do I reach my audience, you are certainly in the right spot in terms of how you think about marketing your physical locations to these different audiences. So with all that as background, thanks for that, Rachel, that's super insightful. With all that background, I want to talk through just a couple of insights around how consumers operate on and think about the platform as a place to discover and shop. So the first note I want to make here is around some data that Facebook released about 6 months ago. They revealed that 75% of consumers are now discovering new products and new services on social media. So what does that mean? That means that we are not Googling tacos near me, or gas grills near me, or oil change near me. Or if we are doing that, we're doing that because we're walking down the street and in the moment need lunch, or driving down the street and need an oil change urgently. But when we are relaxing at home, or when, as Rachel said, sharing some favorite things online, we're doing that on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, Instagram being chief among them. So it's really become sort of a replacement for all other manner of advertising, discovering new products on the radio or on TV, or on, even think about the movie theater and the pre-roll. It's happening today on Instagram. So your audience is expecting to engage with your message and your brand already on this platform. And I think, Rachel, this data might be a little bit old, but, and you can correct this if it is, this is telling you that every 5th post or every 5th reel on Instagram is an ad. And same thing with Facebook, roughly the same thing with LinkedIn, and then Twitter and TikTok are 3rd or 4th and 5th place. Do you think that's changed recently, Rachel? Is it more frequent than every 5th post, would you say?
Definitely. Just from personal use, I count because I'm a nerd and these things interest me, working in marketing. And I would say when you're on Instagram stories, it's every 3rd post is an ad. So you get 1, 2, your friends, and then an ad. And on the feed, I think it's about every 4th post. So yeah, it's definitely increased a little bit since this study.
That's great insight. So the message there is you've got to be especially resonant and especially relevant to that audience, because if you're asking for permission to interrupt people's feeds every 3rd post, you darn well better be doing it with something in their wheelhouse. So the good news is most marketers are doing that, and when consumers interact with Instagram, they understand that the brand's trying to get their attention and trying to get them to take action on their products and services. Actually get kind of a halo effect by virtue of being on the platform. So Meta interviewed a bunch of consumers on the platform recently and asked them, how do you perceive brands on Instagram? Do you see them as popular, creative, entertaining, relevant, committed to community? And you can see the proportion of consumers who said yes to that question. And the one I want to call out here most especially is relevant. So when you think about targeting and you think about your core audience, as Rachel just said, if every 3rd piece of content effectively is asking for your permission to pay attention to it, it is important that you are ever relevant every day, right? So 3/4 of consumers believe that's true. So that's a testament to your marketing effectively and taking the extra step in being in front of the right person at the right time. The other thing that consumers said about Instagram is that they trust it. So we know, if I'm looking for new music, I'll go to Rachel because Rachel's a great source of music discovery for me. And we work together and, I can Slack her any old time. But let's say Rachel's not available or Rachel doesn't know the thing that I want to buy next. Well, guess what? Instagram is actually that platform that we trust most often. 83% of us are using it to discover new products. We talked about that a moment ago. The metadata said 75, 83 most recently. 80% of us are using it to research products. Actually, we're actively going out and looking for the brand's message or the brand's offer on Instagram. And super importantly, 80% of us, again, are deciding based on what we see on Instagram to buy a product or a service. So if anything has replaced, the chat across the fence with the neighbor, Instagram has. And of course, to an extent, TikTok has as well. That's a separate webinar. But we are really using Instagram as sort of the advice giver that used to be done in the form of a casual conversation with friends. And that's, of course, also giving rise to the notion of the influencer on Instagram. Instagram is a major purveyor, if you will, of influencer advertising. Again, a separate webinar. But that's what we trust, right? We trust those folks to talk about new products and new experiences so we can engage in them as well. And then this is where the rubber really meets the road. So it's great to know that we trust it. It's great to know that we make decisions based on it. But here's what actually happens based on Meta, again, Meta's data. Consumers, 65% of consumers actually visited a brand's website or a brand's app after seeing a product or service on Instagram. And that's great. We're interested in that. 46% of us made a purchase either online or offline, of course, and that gets into more the area that we are talking about today, which is foot traffic, and we're working up to that point, don't you worry. And then lastly, 37% of us who saw an ad on Instagram actually went to the store. So we're going to be really focusing, while it's not the 65% of going to a website or an app, it is a huge proportion of the Instagram user base that is taking action based on your ads to get in their car, turn off their phone, or at least put it down, and drive to the store. So massive impact on foot traffic. And we'll talk about how to run those ads and how to measure those ads here next. So with that, I want to talk through just a couple of built-in tools on the Instagram platform or Facebook Ads Manager, Meta, call it whatever you'd like. It's all the same back end. And give you some insight into the tools that are available to you built in that you can use to run your location-based campaigns and drive foot traffic. So they're pretty easy to use. It's a little bit of a blunt object in many cases, but they're there and they're free. So I want to make them known to you. So Instagram has a store traffic objective. So when you select your campaign, you can indicate that your objective is to drive store traffic, and that lets you deliver ads effectively to people who are nearby your locations. So it's great for targeting, right? Because your ads are going to show up with, in front of these people when they are within, walking distance or driving distance to your stores, which is useful. But it's really sort of think of it as almost like the zip code level or the neighborhood level. So it's a fairly blunt object, but it does let you eliminate a little bit of foolish ad spending. How do they do that? They use a pin and a radius, right? So it lets you essentially draw a circle around a location and then serve ads to everybody inside that circle. And Facebook and Meta, all of them, last I saw, gives you accuracy down to a mile. So they can't be necessarily, across the street or in your, on your doorstep. They could be a mile away and have no intention to actually visit your store. So again, a little bit of a blunt object to target nearby audiences. What's interesting though is that even though you can target people who are within, walking or shooting distance, it doesn't actually tell you if somebody saw your ad and then came into your store. So there's no real attribution, right? Effectively, this is a tool for targeting audiences nearby, right? We've all heard that, we've all used that. The punchline is Meta is deprecating all these tools. They're going away. They're actually being replaced by something pretty similar to Google My Business or Google Business Profile, which you've all used, you've all seen it. You Google an oil change place, you Google a restaurant, and you see the restaurant's foot traffic, and you see the restaurant's hours and their telephone number, how busy they are, And it's really just an awareness builder, right? And the action you take from that result on Google, or in this case, that result on Instagram, is you probably call the store or you ask if there's a wait at the restaurant, right? But again, there's no way to correlate that action to somebody who actually then shows up to buy the shoes or eat the tacos or watch the movie or whatever the case might be. So while these tools are handy, they're not super useful to correlating foot traffic to your ad spend. This is the answer to that problem. So let me walk through this in a sort of 1, 2, 3 fashion and illustrate for you how this is the key to solving essentially the walled garden problem, okay? Step 1 is building your audience based on specific places people have visited. And we're going to show you how to do that here shortly. So let's imagine, for the sake of this discussion, we're going to geofence a bunch of gas stations, a bunch of auto dealerships, a bunch of CarMaxes, a bunch of places people go who are in the market for a car. I'll just make this up as we go. And by virtue of geofencing all those places and looking back maybe a month or a week even, we can collect the mobile ad IDs of those people who went to that gas station or who went to that dealership or who went to CarMax. And in aggregate, we end up with 1 million audience members. Of course, this is hypothetical just for easy math. So now we have 1 million mobile ad IDs of people who visited these car-specific locations. When we take that list, it's a CSV. We take that list and we take it to Meta or Facebook Ads Manager, and we upload it as a custom audience. And you've probably all done this before. If you've never built a custom audience on Facebook or Instagram, it's very simple, and I'll show you in a 1, 2, 3 here in a few slides, but it's essentially uploading an Excel file and then building your ads based on that audience. So let's say we do that, and of the 1 million we uploaded, there are 750,000 of them with accounts on Instagram. So we're gonna reach 3/4 of the people that we harvested essentially from those locations. So we're now gonna run our ads on the back of that audience in Instagram, and we wanna drive traffic to, in this case, an auto dealership. We wanna drive traffic to our showroom to get test drivers and signers on the dotted line. So by virtue of uploading that list to Instagram and then effectively watching where those people go in a geofencing platform, we can correlate 50,000 visits to that ad spend on Instagram. Because those mobile ad IDs are unique identifiers, that continues to track the performance of your ad. Even though Instagram's a walled garden, we're cordoning off that audience as a special custom audience and continuing to watch them, so to speak, in an anonymized, privacy compliant way to see where they go during your campaign. And as a result, 50,000 of them went to a number of showrooms across an auto group, for example. So that right there is the 1, 2, 3 on how to solve. How do I know who visited my locations as a result of my Instagram ad spend? So the next couple slides actually walk you through some campaign examples featuring some brands you all know. And one of them uses foot traffic attribution, which we'll show you in a moment. The other one does not. And this one right here does not. So Wendy's, a brand you might all know and love, spent a ton of money on Instagram. And one of their goals was to drive foot traffic to their locations, but they didn't use foot traffic attribution. So I'm going to show you what that looks like when you express an objective, but don't measure it in a way that correlates to your expectations, right? So here's the ad campaign. This is actually a March Madness campaign that ran last year, so timely, but it was 2022, of course. And Wendy's wanted to boost awareness of their sponsorship of the tournament, right? We all know March Madness here in the States. It's a big college basketball tournament, and everyone watches their TV seemingly every hour of the day to see who's winning in the bracket. So the goals for this campaign were to, you can see 3 of them: increase in-store purchases, generate delivery orders, because people, of course, didn't want to leave their TV or their phone, and drive sales through their app, right? So that number 1 goal is the real interesting one. They wanted people to go to their stores as a result of this campaign. They were targeting adults in the US between 18 and 49, again, as Rachel shared, that core audience on Instagram. And they also targeted fans of quick serve restaurants and sporting events. Seems natural. And they ran the campaign between March 13th and April 30th of last year, which is the March Madness time. And they ran a bunch of video and AR ads, and they optimized their budget to automatically over-index for those ads that were the most effective in real time. So this is a smart way effectively to buy programmatically on Instagram. This is a high dollar campaign, as you can imagine. And Instagram automatically plows more dollars into those campaigns that are seeing more results. So what about those results? We know Wendy's wanted in-store sales. What did they measure? Well, they measured using a brand lift study. They measured using Ads Manager data, which we all have access to as Ads Manager users. And they measured results based on a Meta Horizon Worlds Lift study. And that is a bespoke study by Meta for Wendy's to understand how well their ads performed. So looking at these next 6 bullet points, I'll just cut to the chase. There are no foot traffic metrics here at all, right? A lot of them revolve around ad recall, around ad perception, around purchase intent, and you can read through them yourself. And 52 million people reached, which is interesting, but none of them show you, well, who went to Wendy's? How many people, based on my many, many thousands or maybe tens of thousands of dollars in ad spend, came to a Wendy's? So even though you can profess to want to know foot traffic for a specific campaign, you can certainly run one and never know and fly blind, okay? So if you've done that before, don't worry, you're not alone. Even a brand as well known and as well respected as Wendy's has done this before. And I certainly don't mean to call Wendy's out for doing the wrong thing. The campaign was very effective by many measures, but not by the one maybe that was most important to them, which was how many people showed up. So let's talk now about a campaign where this was done, and we'll use a different brand. This is a clothing brand called Nordstrom. Perhaps you've shopped there before. Usually found in malls, often an anchor store in large, urban malls. Rarely a standalone store. Rachel, have you ever seen a standalone Nordstrom?
I don't believe so.
Okay, all right. Well, anyway,
So.
So wherever you're running ads and wherever you want people to show up foot traffic wise, you can do this at standalone stores, you can do this at malls, you can do this at really any retail location that you can think of. So starting at the beginning with this Nordstrom campaign, let me paint a picture for you around what their problem was. So looking at analytics inside of a geofencing platform we call Visit Local, Nordstrom could see that their foot traffic was down month over month. It had actually dropped 7%. They also noticed that people were traveling more than 75% of their customers were traveling more than 5 miles to shop at the Nordstrom that they shopped at. So people were making this a mission, basically. It was a purposeful visit. And you can also see here in the bottom left, only 23% of Nordstrom visitors came back a second time. So it was hard to get that shopper, that consumer at Nordstrom to come back, which is of course a high value customer. So Nordstrom needed to build up its stable of high value customers. They needed to make sure they were reaching audiences further out than 5 miles, and they needed to boost foot traffic naturally. And then the bottom right chart you can see is a comparison of Nordstrom's foot traffic in the green line to its major competitors, Ann Taylor, Express. So they can see essentially, are we in good company? Are we in bad company? What's happening here in terms of our foot traffic compared to our, signature competitors? So Nordstrom tried to solve this problem a couple of different ways. First thing they wanted to do is retain the customers who'd already shopped there. So they geofenced their own stores, and that's the top set of bullets. By setting geofences around their own locations and looking back, I think this was 30 days, they captured 1.486 million unique mobile ad IDs. So when's the last time you were at Nordstrom, Rachel?
I think it's been a couple of years now.
Okay, so you would not be in this audience for sure.
Yeah.
But if let's say Rachel was there, 4 months ago, or maybe she shopped there for the last holiday season, Nordstrom could look back with this kind of technology a year or more even and say, hey, give me everybody who came to Nordstrom over the holiday season in 2021, because I want those people to come back, right? Regardless, they got their 1.48 million device IDs, but they didn't stop there. They also geofenced Neiman Marcus and Ann Taylor and Anthropologie, because they knew that consumers who shopped at those stores were likely to shop at Nordstrom. They just needed the right kind of motivation, right? So they geofenced these stores as well, and they look back, I think 30 days again, and they captured from those locations 2.5 million unique device IDs. So now Nordstrom has about 4 million audience members that they can upload to Instagram, and that's what they did. So they took their Nordstrom audience, they uploaded it, it had a 74% match rate. That is, of the 1.48 million, 74% of those people had accounts on Instagram. Yes, on Instagram. And then of the 2.5 million from the geoconquesting audience, 71% of those had accounts on Instagram. So now they have their addressable audience in the form of people who are most likely to show up at Nordstrom. And here's that 1, 2, 3 I promised you earlier on creating a custom audience in Instagram. This is the Facebook Ads Manager, where you can manage both, obviously, Facebook and Instagram accounts. The first step is to go to the Audience tab and create your audience. The second step is to upload your CSV. It's very simple. It's on your local whatever drive, and throw that into Instagram, and you've got your audience. Step 2 is to create an ad set, and this is about now creating the actual ad on Instagram. It's manual placement. It's going to run on Instagram. We're going to run it in stories. We're going to run it in Reels, and we of course have our creative. That's of course on you as a part of your own creative process. And we now are going to run our ads. And here's what that example might look like. Right here we have an influencer, surprise, surprise, on Instagram wearing some of Nordstrom's fall clothing outside a very nice looking setting, very cozy, patriotic. The season is right? And she has herself 1.3 million followers. So Instagram is using her own platform, Julia's, to attract as many eyeballs as possible. But importantly, they are attracting only the eyeballs that have previously been seen at Nordstrom or previously been seen at Neiman Marcus, Anthropologie, or Ann Taylor. So they're reaching only those people that they know will show up, who are likely to show up. The call to action for the ad, in this case, was shop now. And the way to measure this, they had one goal: get people into Nordstrom, right? Store foot traffic. So using that same platform that showed analytics a moment ago of how is foot traffic looking, how is our competitors' foot traffic looking, Nordstrom can measure the impact of this ad spend, even though it was on Instagram in a walled garden, in the same geofencing platform, because those mobile ad IDs are the common thread between where the audience came from, geofencing those locations, and what the audience is doing during and after the campaign. So here's an example of what could happen. An increase of 33% in foot traffic, down from 7% up to 33%. Interestingly, 88,241 people right in the center of that chart at the bottom showed up at Nordstrom during the campaign. So now Nordstrom can say, hey boss, or the agency could say, hey Nordstrom, we ran that campaign on Instagram, look what happened. Better than 88,000 people showed up at our stores because of Julia's reach or Julia's ads on Instagram. And based on the average ticket at Nordstrom, we can simply do a basic multiplication problem and say 88,241 times X. We drove 1.94 million in top line sales from the Instagram ad buy. So now we have real monetary results that are estimated based on the average value of a footfall to Nordstrom stores. So this is the key to driving measurable results for your physical locations. And of course, your ticket's going to vary if you're a restaurant or if you're a movie theater, or maybe you're an auto dealership and your ticket is $25,000. It's going to, of course, vary, and all of that is customizable in this technology. So with this now as the glue, the mobile ad ID is the glue between running ads on Instagram and understanding what actually happens at your restaurants, at your casinos, at your clients' locations, whatever they may be. You are driving true business results that people outside of marketing really care about. So with that, we have come to the Q&A portion of the webinar, and we are right at 1/2 the hour. So let's see what's in the queue here, Rachel, and we'll start with hopefully the easy ones. Oh, here's an easy one. Is a recording of your recent TikTok webinar available? Yes, in fact it is. Yes, it is indeed. We love to talk about social media platforms, so Instagram today, TikTok yesterday. We're happy to share the recording of the TikTok webinar for anyone who would like it, which shows you, tells you a similar story, but it obviously relates to creative on TikTok, which is the platform du jour. Will this deck be sent out to everyone? Yes, absolutely. We're happy to share the deck. We're happy to share the recording. We will follow up directly with you once those things are available. Next question. How do you handle privacy restrictions? Is it anonymized data? Do you want to take this one, Rachel, or you want me to take a stab at it?
I'll let you take a stab at that one, Dan.
Cool. So privacy is paramount for Reveal Mobile. Privacy is paramount for marketers. And we know it's only becoming more relevant given all the different state laws that are being passed. And we're all anxiously awaiting federal legislation, us here at Reveal Mobile included. So the first thing you want to know is that Reveal Mobile and all the data that we've shared in this webinar is CCPA compliant. So we treat CCPA, which is the California Consumer Privacy Act, just like it's federal legislation, even though it's not. We treat it as such. So everybody under the protection of that law is essentially everyone in our own database. So with CCPA as sort of checked off your list, the other way we account for privacy is that we only make audiences available to marketers like you based on them having opted in at the device level to location services. So if you've given your phone permission to know your location because you want to know the weather, or you want to book a table for the weekend at a restaurant, or whatever the case might be, you've opted into location services. Therefore, you are eligible to be in audiences, addressable audiences like the ones we've talked about today, and of course being measured in terms of attribution from that ad spend. So it's all certainly above board. How does Apple's iOS security settings affect this? That's a really good question. I'll take it, since it's related, Rachel, I'll take this one too. iOS, for those of you who are not in the know, released a couple of maybe years ago now, iOS 14.5, which gave ultimate authority to the consumer, which we love, right? We want each individual consumer to have his or her or their say in what they're going to do with their data. So by virtue of giving the consumer ultimate authority over opting in or opting out of location data, our audiences dipped temporarily. So as you can imagine, fewer people were available to us, and some of those people now were, because they weren't giving their device permission, were not in these audiences. That is water under the bridge long ago. We have since addressed that issue by offering the opportunity to add household devices to your audience. So if, for example, Rachel were running this campaign and she wanted to target everybody who'd been to Nordstrom, she can do that. She could also expand that audience and say, hey, target everybody who was seen at Nordstrom and target all of the adults in the same households. So maybe Rachel's spouse or Rachel's adult child, if Rachel had one, right? So you can imagine the expansion of that audience being a really relevant play and saying, hey, you know, let's say your spouse went to Nordstrom last week and you're now having a conversation about a major purchase at Nordstrom. Well, the other spouse could be a part of that conversation and also be targeted and influenced based on that media. So the Apple iOS security issue is really sort of a past water under the bridge sort of question and issue. Do you think Instagram is the right social media platform for a small, specialized medical practice? That's interesting. Rachel, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure thing, Dan. Instagram, yes, I would say, I don't know that I would say it's the right platform, like the one and only. In all honesty, I would go ahead and just be on all of the social platforms that you can. Being medical, you might run into a couple of issues with targeting. There are a little like sensitive place targeting issues on Facebook and things like that. But overall, I would just try and, you know, spread it as far as you can. Any social network that you can use, I would use.
Good call. Smart advice. Here's a tricky one, and we get this question a lot. Do you have a suggested ad spend for QSRs? It's a really good question, and I struggle with it only because it's akin to asking how long is a piece of string, right? Well, it's an unsatisfying answer, but it depends, right? So I think the best way to spend for getting people to visit your QSR is to start small. Run a monthly campaign of at least several $1,000s, right, to reach the audience you need to reach based on the way you're bidding, how large the audience is, what frequency you want your ad to show up in front of these people throughout their month, and then make a best estimate as to how much you want to spend. I would say at a minimum, you know, you're looking at several $1,000s for month one, depending on how many locations your QSR is. Of course, if you're a national brand, you're looking at not a couple thousand, you're looking at many, many tens of thousands of dollars. But if you're a 20 location QSR or 50 modest sized QSR, you could probably start small. From there, watch the campaign closely, see who shows up, and put money, of course, where the results are, and take money out of where the results are not. So it's really a question of starting with what you feel like is reasonable, and then after a month, adjusting up or down from there. So I tried to make an unsatisfying answer satisfying. Anything to add to that, Rachel?
That was pretty spot on, Dan. You're an expert as always.
Cool. Oh, shucks. That's the second time you've said something nice about me. So now we've reached our quota. And now I need to say 2 nice things about you. So let me get to that. Do you have any localized marketing advice for those who need to book appointments as opposed to just foot traffic? Book appointments. I assume, would that be a phone call or maybe an online form fill, I assume? And I'm actually going to take a flyer on that one, only because this webinar is really about driving foot traffic to locations, as opposed to getting people to pick up the phone or fill out a web form. Do you have a webinar on influencer marketing or how small businesses get connected with influencers? In fact, we do. Glad you asked. About 3 months ago, so it's very fresh content, we ran a full-length webinar on how to run influencer marketing campaigns on Instagram. So we're happy to share that with you and we'll follow up with you directly. Let's see. Here's a good one for you, Rachel. Are there any don't do's, anything you should avoid when it comes to using Instagram ads, whether in the visual creative or in the planning or the strategy, anything you would steer folks clear of as they think about their paid media on Instagram?
Try and blend in is what I would say. The best ads that I see on social media are the ones where I'm looking at it for multiple seconds before I realize it is an ad, because one, I'm interested in the content, two, just the branding and the copywriting, don't come across corny. Try and, just write it as a user would write a post, kind of think about who would be reading it and who you want to be your audience, and speak in their language is what I would say.
That is an objectively exceptional response. I blew it. I totally blew it. I tried to get it out and I couldn't even say it.
Third time's the charm.
Man, that was a struggle. Objectively. Okay, is Instagram the best platform for higher end retail with no e-commerce? Good. So Nordstrom would be a good example. Well, Nordstrom has e-commerce, I guess, but high end retail, great question. Maybe a BMW dealership group or something would be a high end retail. Looking to boost traffic for a small business with 2 locations within 5 miles of each other. So maybe a fine dining group. This is a really good question. It is a great platform for high end retail for sure. In fact, they all could be, depending on how you're targeting your audience. So, case in point, if you were to extract your audience from other high-end retailers, let's say you want to target people who went to Mercedes dealerships and people who went to Tiffany, the jeweler, people who go to, I don't know, Whole Foods as a high-end grocery store, you could extract those audience members and then market only to those people on Instagram. And of course, they're probably high net income people, and attract them to your 2 locations. I will throw out this caveat though. If you only have 2 rooftops, you're probably not going to see the volume of foot traffic in the attribution to make it meaningful. Even if you look back, many, many months with only 2 rooftops, the data isn't that robust that there would be too many people falling through the cracks, essentially, right? Because people will show up to your restaurants, or maybe I'm assuming they're restaurants, and they don't have their phones with them, or they haven't opted in location services, or they left their phone in the car, if that's a realistic, scenario. So it's possible that people will still visit your stores, they just will not be attributable to the ads. So we consider sort of the minimum threshold, the minimum viable threshold for rooftops to be 25 or 30. So if you have 30 stores in your portfolio or 30 locations in your portfolio, that's sort of the baseline number for this kind of technology being useful. And of course, there's no limit. The maximum is maximum, but the minimum is, I would say, 25 to 30. let's see. Oh, furniture showroom. So the person filled me in. It's not a high-end restaurant. It's a furniture showroom. Thank you. Appreciate that. And then the last comment is for you, Rachel. It says, thank you for today. Awesome job. Have to run. So there's your second kind word from our audience members. Not even from me.
Thanks, everyone. We're so glad
Awesome.
that you would cut out time of your afternoon to join us.
Right on. Oh, one more just came in. Let's see. How specific or tailored should Instagram ads be when running multiple location ad sets? That is a great question. And this is the relevance. And feel free to add on to this, Rachel, but this is the relevance button, right? So if you can offer people a localized ad, and there are platforms that do this, on Instagram for, or even using built-in Instagram tools for the Google My Business style of awareness, you want to be as relevant as possible. You do not want to market your, Sacramento location to people in Los Angeles, right? That just goes without saying. So spend the time carving out your audience, segmenting your audience, and then if you have to upload separate custom audiences, obviously from local locations, or I should say nearby locations or local DMAs, that's certainly the way to do it. Any thoughts on being specific or tailored for Instagram, Rachel?
I'd have to agree. I've gotten a couple of ads when I was traveling, like, it's 30 miles away from where I am in the city. Don't know if I'm going to make it that far. So yeah, definitely think about that and take the time to segment those audiences.
Right on, right on. Well, it's now 1/4 to the hour, and we certainly want to give you time back if there are no more questions. If you're the kind of person, though, that thinks that there are questions at 3 a.m. or, oh, you hang up today and you're like, ah, darn it, take a note and email us. We're happy to entertain any questions that come to you as you wake up at 3 a.m. this morning and wonder why you didn't get this question across at 2 o'clock today. So we're here for any old time. rcartledge@revealmobile.com, ddillon@revealmobile.com. We're happy to help, happy to guide, and happy to answer any more of your great questions today. Rachel, dynamite presentation today. We appreciate all your insights.
Right back at you, Dan. Couldn't do it without you.
Oh, shucks. Have a great day, everybody. Enjoy the rest of a cool January, and we will see you around the neighborhood. Take care, all.